too much separation. Connect to the E. Trust yourself. 1, 2, 1. Nice low G's. Oh, thanks. Every time. Okay, have a seat, folks. You want to play?
Yes.
Great. You want to play a couple notes because it's been a long time?
Sure. Can I borrow that book?
Yeah, sure.
Is it like alphabetical?
Yeah, there's a list in the front.
Alright, cool.
You can do that alphabetical, right?
Okay, maybe.
Your name is?
Reynolds.
Hi. Wow. Are you related to Rex Martin or Chris Martin? Or
I wish. I wish.
Thank you. Okay. I'm not going to be mean, but I'm going to tell you about 12 things that are wrong.
Good.
Okay, generally you have a good approach sound-wise. That was very interesting because I was wondering what happened to my telephone. I must have left it in my room when that ding went off. Okay, so your sound concept is mostly there. So if you want to make a list of the things, there's like projects in this piece. I'm going to tell you, because there's a lot of faults that we all do. There's one. Those 2 eighth notes have to be da da. It can't be rushed. You probably heard that before. Why do you think we all rush those? Most of us rush that C to the F. Any idea? See? Huh?
The skip from the CD.
Yeah, insecurity, and it was one of the first excerpts we ever played, and we had to sort of leap for that note, and so we lunge at it and we're rushing, and we get used to it and we think it's right. And so play this for me. Dee da 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 tongue da da. Don't slur it, just that much, and much louder. Okay, 1, 2, 3. It was just a fraction ahead. That D. That F was just or the D was. Again. 1, ready, go. Slur it. Just exactly the way it is. I mean, slur those. Tongue the others. Ready, and go. Okay, you're still accenting the F and lunging. And it's actually a weak note, isn't it? It's the end of the note. Okay, Reynolds, what's the meter that he wrote? And who wrote this?
Ravel. Wolf for piano and then Mussorgsky for orchestra.
Other way around.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'm so
No, you said it right. You just said it in reverse order. Mussorgsky wrote it first for piano. There you go. We both sound like idiots. And they all know what we meant, which is really cool. And then Ravel arranged it. He not the only one. A lot of people did. Okay? So what meter? What's the meter?
It starts in 5/4, and then it switches to 6/4.
11/4 time. What an odd meter. Each phrase is 11/4. Why would he do that back in the 1800s? Why? He didn't want it to sound like a march. One of the reasons. Ba, 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 da, ba, ba, ba. Guess how many people accent that D? And he put it on the weak beat, the 5th beat, on purpose, and then on the 2nd beat of the next bar. So why do we accent it? Again, bad habits. So What we want in here is a beautiful sound that every note is a golden jewel, and it's homogeneous. It's a processional. It's a walk. It's a gentle walk. That's one of the things we want, with a ringing, brilliant tone. Can't be you. Don't play into the stand. I'm not even listing all the things that I didn't like. It was way too soft. You're playing into the stand. Get this thing up if you need to. Put it over to the side if you need to. Please don't play the D's flat. So let's just talk about pitch, okay? The second note's going to be sharp. It's first valve, isn't it? The B flat's going to be sharp. So the note you... Everybody thinks the G's are dull in this piece. They're not dull. All the other notes are bright and sharp. The G is the first note. That's the one we want to relate to. Otherwise, it sounds like ba ba. So lower your first slide, leave it out, and more so for the F. Get it out further, and then get your eyebrows up. You know. So slowly, those just that measure. Ready, go. You can't have your slide out for the D, Reynolds.
Yeah.
Get that baby back in. Again, it was pretty good though. Ready? Don't lunge for the F. Get the F out and then in. Practice just the slide. Da, out, out. You're just going to move your slide while I sing. Da, da, no, out. Ba, ba, a little bit. Ba, 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 all the way in. See, you can actually practice that without wasting your lip. Okay, we don't need to do that. Okay, so pitch-wise, that would be very, very smart, so that this note doesn't sound dull. Now we're going to talk about this note, the 11th note of every two measures. What did he do that was horrible?
There wasn't presence after the phrases, so it kind of just cut off and ended and started the next phrase.
What's your name?
George.
You're pretty sharp, George. Yeah, it wasn't only that, but you didn't even play a quarter note because you're so worried about the breath. So, how do we play Petrushka Ballerina? The whole piece in one breath? Or just stop where you need a breath? Or learn to breathe fast? Isn't it interesting? Put a line under that one too. So you could be 1 out of 10 people that play that full length, but you have to learn a fast breath. There's not a lot of teachers that teach a fast breath. Chikowitz didn't teach a fast breath. He actually told us when you run out of air, just stop right there, take a good breath, and go on. I'd like to try that on the promenade. Now it's a 12-beat phrase. So no, that's one of the skills we need to learn to do is a very fast breath. My tone sounds like crap. I'm sorry about that. But you see there's a fast breath, and it's not stacking up. I'm using up right away. So we could practice that. Here's a good way to practice this phrase, this piece, and any piece, and that is to start on the last two notes, which just happen to be the same as the first two notes, without taking a breath. Bob, I'm going to point to you. Don't take a breath. And then you're going to breathe as fast as you can and play a long F. Don't take a breath. When I point at you, you're just going to play.
Right.
Don't take a breath. Took a breath. Don't do it. Okay, you're missing the point. We're going to practice taking a breath here.
Okay.
And you're going to practice by making yourself empty.
Okay.
So play those two notes. Don't breathe. I know, it's a weird habit. Here we go. Just play. You need to breathe after the second note.
Okay. Okay.
Believe me, you're going to need to.
Okay.
Let the air out.
Right.
Play the G. F. No, you're going to that note. You're going to start here.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You're going to take a breath, just the way you would like to do it when you're playing the whole piece. I'm sorry it's sounding confusing and I'm going fast and I'm making you feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot. So you're just going to... Like that. Sound like a bassoon player. Here we go. Good. That's the way... No, then you go on. And your goal is to take a big enough breath that you're going to get all the way to here. So take a huge one. But that wasn't even an eighth note. So you got to play the F longer, right? Don't do the same thing. Just play. Don't breathe. Still take a breath. Be empty. Blow it out. Play. Can you hear how short that is? Okay. That's okay. That's why you're doing it. You get 33 more tries. Bravo. That's it. That's the idea. And within 2 days of practicing like that, you're going to have that in mind to play full value as much as possible, sort of pushing the note out, letting it ring while you breathe as fast as possible to play another couple measures. You can't breathe in the middle here like you did. You played 5 notes. You can't do that unless you can cover it up. I actually finally heard the Reiner recording of Hersa doing this. Of course, I grew up with it. I lived in Peoria, and there was a classical music station once a week, 7 o'clock at night. Once a week in Peoria. Most of them, worked at Caterpillar Tractor Company, so they're farmers. They didn't listen to anything like that. And the theme song for the whole show every week was Hersa with Reiner playing the Promenade. And I grew up with that. And then they'd play other pieces. And one time, when I listened on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, they played the entire Pictures at an Exhibition. I'm just a little kid. I'm 12. I had no idea. Was a trumpet. I thought it was an organ. I'm not kidding. It was so fluid. He played on a D trumpet. It was quite remarkable. Finally, I heard that same recording driving to work about 6 years ago. And I turned it up, and it was so memorable. And it was on WFMT in Chicago. I turned it up, and I finally heard, he takes a breath. Bum, 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 ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. But he did it so well, I had never heard it before. He camouflaged it so well. That's your goal. Every note in this piece has a line under it. We can't just decide to play some of them short. Okay, now, of all the things that I think you didn't do well, intonation, rushing those notes, cheating that note, and not sounding like it's rich and beautiful sound throughout, the most important one I didn't talk about. You need a trumpet sound to die for here. It should be the most glorious, brilliant sound. Don't look at those notes, okay? Look back there, make your sound bounce off the mirror. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're going to do that right now. I'm going to conduct it. Okay? Just don't. I'm afraid to have you do that. Just do the first 4 notes. Just play. Stop on the C. Ready? Sound. You even rush to the C. Steady. Ready? Good. Good. Stay brilliant on the C. Yeah. Again. Ready? To the mirror. That's good. The C's a little bit flat. Yeah. But that's the idea, is you want to play out, not here to the music stand, and keep that. You have a good sound. It's very nice. Keep the spin going all the way, and every note should be there. That's the most important thing in this piece, is to get that. I like Phil Smith. He used to say, he pictured a thin, tall Englishman with a bolo hat walking through a gallery. Well, he's English. But, we have to have some quality there. Isn't it amazing that Ravel, who is considered one of the greatest, if not greatest, arrangers, orchestrators, however you want to call it, in other words, picking what instrument should play what parts, that he's the person that made this so famous. And who did he give this to? The saxophone at first. Did you know that?
No.
Good, because that's not true. The trumpet! How about that? The most brilliant, the most talked about trumpet instrument in the whole Bible. The brilliant trumpet. That's who gets this. Anybody ever make a count of well-known orchestral works and operatic works that start with trumpet? Alone? Sort of cool, isn't it? You got Rienzi, tuning pitch A, big crescendo, diminuendo. Yeah. Lecoq d'Or, if you let it be two trumpets in unison, Rimsky-Korsakov. Of course, we've got Shostakovich, First Symphony, Mahler 5, Promenade, and there's probably a couple more that I can't think of. Anybody can think of another one?
Oberon.
Oberon, that's a little later. It's about the third bar. I mean, bum, bum, bum,
Yeah,
bum, bum.
I guess it's not the first part.
Yeah, it's a little bit later. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Anybody else want to play? Anybody want to ask me questions? Okay then. The next class will be at. Come on, I can ask questions. We have another hour. I've got a lot of stories. Thank you.
Did you ever finish saying why the cornet was?
Oh, thank you. Good man. Yeah, I'd be happy to. And your name is?
Jacob.
Oh, see, yeah, I need people like Jacob to keep me straight. Okay. All right, so when were valves being developed, roughly? 19?
No.
Give me a span of maybe 10, 15 years. From here to here. Just, I don't care how close you are.
1795 to 1810.
No.
Oh.
You're right about there was an attempt to take a valveless trumpet and put keys on it, and that was the Haydn and for the Hummel.
Yeah.
But it was basically the same instrument, and that allowed more notes. But let's see, what was that guy's name? Can't hear you. Who's the guy that designed that trumpet that went to Haydn and said Weidinger? You didn't say Weidinger, right?
No, it's
Dauvigny, yeah. Anton Weidinger, of course. Thank you very much. It's getting old. Okay. He was a very excellent Baroque trumpet player. Only like everybody, he wanted to be able to play more notes. He also thought he could make some money. He's going to make this new trumpet, and he put some keys on it that were very long. Maybe some of you have seen some of these instruments, like saxophone keys, long lever, and they'd open up a couple holes here and there. Well, he got railed by the critics. Railed. I've read some of those because the sounds were so uneven. Why did the horn players get away with it? Because they go, ba, 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 I mean, that's pretty uneven too, but they stopped horn. They used it a lot. And so Weidinger thought, well, again, the trumpet is so brilliant that a dead dull note coming out of a little hole over here just didn't match up. And so it didn't sell. But he got another guy to write one, the Hummel. That was pretty cool. Got Hummel to write it. All right, so it was more like in the 1830s and early 40s. Okay, it was when people were developing systems using various types of valves. And there's a lot of names you could throw in there, but I'm just going to tell you that every attempt at the trumpet to add valves, the intonation was horrible. Look what we just experienced on our modern day trumpet with 7 different combinations. It's still horrible. Nothing's been changed. That's why I said the last 100 years that pitch finder on the tuning slide fixes just about everything. And before I got that, I would have to play, see, what's your name again? Coleman. So if I'm going to play in key of D, this is actually the worst key, not the key of C. We're going to play in the key of D, and we're going to play, whatever, Beethoven, Mozart, Brahms. We had to deal with the flat Ds, didn't we? We could be on a B-flat trumpet, too, playing in parts in C, up a note. And so the first thing to do, what I always did, is I pushed my tuning slide in. So this is your solution today. Next time you play any of these pieces in orchestra, everybody, no matter what part you're playing, tune the D. That's the note you play more Slavic. Why are you going to sit there and play it flat? So wherever you have to put it, then pull your second slide out to the very longest that you can possibly do. And why am I doing that? For those thirds. All those F sharps. And I've got to at least pull it out as far as I push this one in. I really can't get it far enough. And then, of course, we have to deal with the A's, which isn't going to be very much. So, but in the old days, it was, every note was bad. Flat, Can anybody hear that? How sharp that is? Bravo. My work is done. I'm not kidding. I tell my students, I do a class, and I say, if I could change your ears, and that's the first step. The first step in having good intonation is starting to hear, having the knowledge to know how notes usually are, and they're different for every horn. I gave you generalizations. You have to find out what you do. Some people play very sharp in the upper register. Okay, so back to the cornet. So, what does cornet mean? Anybody have an idea? Ever hear the corno? Little horn? That's all it is. It's a little horn. Conical bell, conical tubing. And the old cornets, you could take the old cornets, you could not take out the tube. Thank you for having it move. You could not take this out and put it in upside down. Why? Because the tubing down here was already wider. This got wider here. Now this was straight. These were straight because you had to push the slide in. But this was conical. The cornet truly was conical when they first made it. Why would that help? Intonation. You can lip better when it's conical. You can lip notes. And that's all the cornets, right? It's what I grew up. Hearst grew up on cornet. Phil Smith grew up on cornet. Most people played cornets. How many here started on cornet? Wow. Okay, it's really gotten away from that. But most people started on cornet because it was easier. Production was easier. The cornet, true cornet mouthpiece should be V-shaped, not shallow. And that'll help you sound more cornet-like. I showed you when I did that on my mouthpiece when I just unscrewed the rim. Okay, here's a half. There's a full. Back to original. Amazing, isn't it? They had the mouthpiece did as much as the horn did. It mellowed the sound and allowed them better production. You got notes to speak when it's that V-shaped, and you could bend the notes. So here they developed an instrument for what reason? To fix the lousy intonation. That's what it was, because if you played any D's or D flats, they were horrible. You know what another solution that took place? Ever hear of the F trumpet? This one?
I've got one.
You do?
Yeah, you want
The long things?
Well, not the bridge instrument, but the later, the cornet-shaped.
Yeah, okay, so the original ones didn't have so
one.
many bends.
My dad will bring it later in the week.
Great. But the original ones were just like a B flat, only they were this long. And they looked the same. They didn't come back around. But that's an F trumpet. In other words, it's what? It's a fifth lower than our C trumpet. It's a fourth lower, meaning it's longer. And so it's lower. It's like a trombone. If you're not sure about that, push the slide out, it goes down lower. Pretty easy concept. So the F trumpet, what did that do? Number one, they played in higher partials. So they eliminated 1 and 3, 1, 2, and 3, and most of the 2 and 3s. And so they only had to deal with four fingerings, and that helped tremendously. Mahler grew up with the F trumpet sound. He so loved it that I think when trumpet players switched to B flats in the 1890s, I think that's what killed him. I'm not kidding. He wrote the beginning of his Fifth Symphony for B flat trumpet, and he was doing this. He said, "Okay, you guys," because see, when the B flat trumpet came around compared to that, what did we have? We had an F trumpet that long, and they made an instrument a fourth lower. That's like you going to an E flat today after playing a B flat all the time. A fourth lower, a fourth shorter. I'm sorry. And so the B flat trumpet was better than sliced bread. Trumpet players, they melted down their F trumpets almost and made lamps out of them. I kid you not. It was abandoned like overnight. The B flat trumpet came in. It was so much easier. But you know what? Trumpet players sacrificed the tone. Because if you make an instrument that's shorter, what do you lose? Everybody said brilliance is right. Because the brilliance comes from what kind of tubing? It's one of those two, isn't it? Cylindrical, straight tube. If you're unsure about this and you have to make a guess and you don't want to be, embarrassed, think of the Baroque trumpet. Except for a little bitty lead pipe and a tiny bell about that long. It's from here to here to here, straight tubing. It's the most brilliant of all trumpets. You don't have to play that loud, the Baroque trumpet. In fact, it's so. Why do you think everybody talked about the blaring trumpets back in those days? It wasn't a golden person sound. It was blaring. That's why we got all the fanfares. That's why we got all this stuff in the Bible. For the wrath of God, the love of God, praise of God, the end of the world. You don't use a clarinet for that. By the way, don't ever date a clarinet player.
Yeah.
It's the antithesis of your concept of tone. And I'm half kidding. Your girlfriend's a clarinet player, right? Nope. Okay. Well, your lawyer looking there is very judgmental. Sorry. I dated a clarinet player. It was a tragedy. Okay, so all that brilliance, and you didn't have to play loud. Mahler loved it. So first, second, third, fourth symphonies. It's basically in F trumpet, but he starts the Fifth Symphony off for B flat trumpet to satisfy these dudes. But what does he do on the very last note of that whole opening solo? If you're not sure,
Yeah, it's a pedal.
it's not a pedal.
It's hard.
Pedals are. What's a pedal? It's that. No, of course I wouldn't do that. For public. I'm playing 1 and 3 without the slide. There's sort of a ledge there. And it sort of works. It's an E flat, which would be an F for the B flat trumpet. And they didn't have slides, so they couldn't just go. You probably know this one Clark piece. It's actually not in our Clark book. Because they couldn't play a low F. I do. And you all should be able to play a low F. If you're going to play a C trumpet, you can't raise your hand to the conductor and say that note's below my horn. He's going to say, then move over, we'll fix your salary later, and have the other guy play. So Mahler did that, and then when he got to that note, he went like, see, you can't play all the notes, can you? He actually didn't say any of that stuff, it's just my imagination. But I know that he hated the B-flat trumpet. And he continued to write, even all the way through his Ninth Symphony, for F trumpet. He mixed them up, but he really loved the sound of the F trumpet. Okay, so what did Mahler really do? What was his main...
He's conductor in New York Philharmonic.
Well, he was a conductor. That was his last gig, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was a conductor. He made money conducting, not writing music. But he thought of himself as a composer. So it was very interesting. And he knew about stuff. And he edited things because he realized some people couldn't do certain things. So you'd get 2 different openings of this Fifth Symphony. Questions? Anybody want to play? I promise I'll be nicer than I was to Reynolds.
I have a question.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to save my job here. I'm going to meet again tonight. You guys got to, get together and come up with stuff.
You told us about 2 recordings in cursive and his name. I didn't write down the one where he comes in with the A. That's out of.
Yeah, that's Zarathustra. I'm sorry. Zarathustra. Thus spake there Zarathustra by Strauss.
What does that mean?
Huh?
What does that mean?
Thus spoke Zarathustra. And it was Nietzsche, basically. And Nietzsche sort of said, God, You wouldn't exist if mankind wasn't here to adore you and believe in you and worship you. That was Nietzsche. So Zarathustra sort of portrays that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other one was Mahler, 5 open. Yeah.
Right.
So just to go along with that story about that high A, I played fourth trumpet for 4 years. I played fourth trumpet for 8 years in Chicago Symphony. The last 2 years I played half of it because Vince Chiglitz was having problems with an ulcer and he's just was taking, for example, we did Mahler 8 and we recorded Mahler 8 in Vienna and I played second on that recording and Vince played fourth. That was his last year. The day I moved to second trumpet, I'm sitting there, rehearsal about ready to start, and Herseth leaned over and he said, "Count." And I played my high A's third valve, based on that Zarathustra. And then that's what he did all the time. He never played an A1 and 2 again, a high A. Played the lower ones. He actually, his trumpets that he played on a long time, on the first slide, he couldn't help it because Bach was making him that way. You might be interested why he played the Bach, by the way. I can tell you a little bit of that if you didn't know that story. There was a ring here. Do you have a ring? A lot of you guys have a ring instead of a saddle. Most of them are saddles now. But he had a ring, but it wasn't attached to the first slide. It was up here. He held a trumpet with it. Now, I have to defend him. He's the guy that gave me that book about the acoustics and the intonation of the trumpet. So he was trying to learn also. But nobody ever talked about intonation. 1920s, 30s, 40s, nobody. All those great trumpet players you might have heard, all the jazz players, they didn't know squat. They had no idea. And what instrument do you think is the most difficult to play in tune with? Other than another trumpet, we know that. Actually, we're pretty good at that because we do that the most often. What instrument?
Oboe.
Piano. Thank you. And that's how we play our juries. It is a terrible sound. How many remember in grade school and first few years of high school, and maybe still in college, where you tune and you look at the piano player for them to tell you if you're sharp or flat? It's because we don't recognize the timbre of the piano. So you can fix that. You can get a friend, or you can do it yourself. So what am I? Thank you. And that's the way you should always tune. You walk out on stage. I'm flat. This is a high piano, probably 442. Or my horn's cold, or I'm just bad. But that's how you can tell it immediately. You don't need help. Don't play at the same time. You can't tell one from the other. Now you can practice that more. You can go. By the way, what's another instrument that you have to be perfect with and you make more money playing with this instrument than any other instrument? More than the piano, more than other trumpets, certainly not oboe. It's not the accordion. Who do you play with at Easter weddings?
Organ.
And those dudes don't tune to you. They never do. I mean, they're so stubborn. You can go to a church. That thing's going to play forever. And you can try fifths and fourths and seconds and thirds, unisons and octaves. Just get away from it. Turn around so you're not playing into it and hear the two together. What an education it would be. You will all get so much better just playing with the organ. So when we play with different instruments, we're trying to learn to recognize the timbre of those instruments. So what instrument do we play with most often? Another trumpet. oddly to say, we're best at that than anything else, because we do it most often. And that is one of the most frustrating things you probably all would have to agree on, playing with other trumpets. You all agree? Why is it so? Because all your buddies are just as ignorant as you are. And I don't mean stupid, I mean lacking knowledge about what the tendencies are of the instruments. And then the trumpet, if you get players that aren't really advanced, they have other issues. They'll play really sharp on upper register notes and flat on lower notes, and it's very difficult. But it's also, if you learn to play a couple notes in tune, which our trio did, play a bunch of notes in tune, it's the most gratifying thing you can have. It's a beautiful sound. It's wonderful. So when things are in tune, I'll say another thing. A lead trumpet player, when they practice those passages, they're going to play a big band show maybe on Saturday, and they've got 3 days in their practice. Boy, are they hard in the practice room. But as soon as they have a rehearsal and the rest of the band is playing quite well in tune, that lead player can float across the top. Because what happens is that the top upper voices in chords are simply what? Partials. So when you play octaves on a Mozart symphony, what's louder, the first trumpet or the second trumpet? What should be the loudest? Easy question, come on. Huh? Always the lower octave plays louder. But you can't do that if the guy's named Herseth. He's going to take you out in the alley. Things have changed now. When I go play an orchestra job, one of the things that Jason didn't say is, I also played first at Grant Park for 8 years. I played at age 19, first trumpet in lyric opera for 3 years before I got to Chicago Symphony. Most of my playing has been playing in an orchestra. When I started getting a grasp about how horrible my intonation was, that's the start. Your attitude about your intonation, that's where you start. Everything that's out of tune, you have to realize it's you. That's the first thought. And then, wow, it's 1 and 2. I didn't pull up myself. I bet I'm sharp. You got a better guess, don't you? So one of the things I started doing when I would be, the last time I was called in as a guest was Seattle Symphony, and I went in before the principal trumpet that's there now. But I came in and I played 2 weeks with them. I played pictures and exhibition with the Seattle Symphony. Jerry Schwartz wasn't on that concert, but so they had a guest conductor. As soon as it was clear, I felt to my second trumpet player that he thought I was a decent player and I was capable. Within 5 minutes, I leaned over and said, by the way, I would like to hear you in octaves play louder than me. I'll tune to you. Have you ever heard a first trumpet player say that? Start saying it now. That second trumpet player is going to feel like a comrade, a partner. And that's the way you should hear it. The top octave is a partial, for heaven's sakes. It's not the one we want to hear. I don't care who you are. Again, that's the arrogance. It's the bottom octave. That's what we want to hear. And if you start suggesting that to your second player, they're going to start working on the intonation because they're now responsible. They're just floating along, and they feel like they're part of the gang, part of the whole picture. It's wonderful. And I've done that probably 30 times in my life. Lean over to the second trumpet player and say, every time we're in octaves, please play louder, and I will tune to you. That's remarkable. That's not what the concept was when I first started playing in orchestras. And again, it's the arrogance, and things are changed. So guess who Chris Martin plays first to now? Ethan Bensdorf. He's in heaven. He is so happy. Ethan Bensdorf, just beautiful, big sound. Chris can just lean back. So if you have 3 players in your orchestra, and you're going to do check 4, check 5, check 6, this is just an example. as first trumpet player, you would ask the second and the third to play second parts. Double the second part, not the first. If you have 4 players, then you double both of them. When you only have 2 players, it sounds really bright. But when you start doubling the trumpets, you get this massive sound instead of louder, a big block of sound. So there's a difference, and if you've never thought of it, there's a difference between a solo note all by itself. So when Reynolds played the Promenade, there's nobody else playing. He's responsible for his own brilliance. He has to really pour it on. You could call it a small vibrato if you want, very narrow. But he's responsible for spinning the sound. But if that were in octaves, it would have twice the brilliance if it's in tune. Twice the brilliance. What about a unison? Now it's cutting down the brilliance. It's a block of sound. All the composers in the 20th century, 19th century, they all knew, in the 18th century, they all knew exactly what those sounds were and how to write for them. So unisons have a value, and it should be 2 players, like unified. That's a good word for unison, right? But octaves, it's the most brilliant sound you can get. And so you try to encourage that from your section. And you tune to them, and they will respect you. There'll be more harmony and feeling of a team. That's what an orchestra is. It's a big team. Before you fall asleep on me, we'll stop. Okay, see you later tonight. I think there's probably other stuff going on. Or no, we go to 3:30. More questions? Yes.
So, when we're studying music at a university, we do all these ear training classes, and our teachers will encourage us to practice with our tuning in some way, such as a drone. But what are other ways we can improve our ears? So that
Well,
we can be more
the only
sensitive?
reason I would be negative about a drone is it's probably not going to match any instrument you'd ever play. So you might as well, if you can get one that can sound like an oboe or a clarinet or a violin, that'd be great. And yes, I agree, you should do that, and you should use the tuner on your stand as often as possible. But don't sit and stare at it while you're playing. Play a little past ba-da-da-da, in any place you want to, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, whoa! Or play the Promenade and stop on the D, and it'll be revelation time. So you need to do that. And every time you buy a new trumpet, or you're playing on a piccolo or an E-flat or a flugelhorn, okay, thank you for bringing that up. What's the tendency of most flugelhorn players when they switch from their B-flat or C or piccolo or E-flat and pick up their flugelhorn? Their tendency will be to play sharp or flat or perfect.
But
Sure.
Why?
Isn't they play like a trumpet?
Smaller board.
What? They play like a trumpet. Who's starting
They
to
play
say?
like a trumpet.
They're expecting the sound of the trumpet that they've been playing all the time, which has more brilliance, brightness, whatever, and they will compensate. You will compensate and play sharp. Not kidding. It's classic. Everybody. Everybody. Can't help it. Switch to rotary valve trumpet. There's another topic. Thank you for bringing that one up. Okay, rotary valve trumpet. What is a rotary valve trumpet?
It's one of those weird trumpets.
Some people call them sidewinders. Literally, instead of piston valves, they are rotary valves, like horn players use. It's a little turning thing. And when valves were being developed, the Eastern or the European bloc, Germany, Austria, went exactly to the rotary valve. And they're still using them today. It still became a trumpet. But now today, let's say New York Philharmonic comes in here. What's the difference between a rotary valve trumpet in sound in the orchestra to the piston valve trumpet? Any idea?
The action of the pistons is a lot softer, so
There's other major factors. Talk about the tubing. It's not larger. It's shaped differently, but is it more cylindrical or conical? Has anybody bothered to figure it out?
It's more common.
It's more conical. That's what you think, because you all think of the rotary valve trumpet as being mellower, don't you? Do you all play them in schools? You think they're more mellow. They're more mellow up close. They're actually more cylindrical. Surprise. So guess what they have? More brilliance. So brilliance actually up close sounds dark, but it projects with the overtones. Dark is a funny term. There's more color in the tone of a rotary valve trumpet. It's not dull. It's not mellower. It's unbelievably more brilliant. Why? Because it's actually a higher percentage of cylindrical tubing. So that's the definition, and that's why it is. It's just that we're fooled by it. We think it's a little muffy or woofy or whatever. Up close it might be. Conductors love it. They don't know what to call it. But it's wonderful in the orchestra. So I'm having the enjoyment of playing with the Houston Grand Opera. I'm their unofficial third trumpet. And so every time they have need extra trumpets, I get to play. So year before this last year, I played Siegfried with them. And that means like 6 performances and a lot of rehearsals. And then this last year we did Goddardammerung. And the third trumpet is amazing because Wagner wrote, not that the first trumpet gets all the solos. Wagner wrote whatever range he wanted, that determined who got the solo. So if they were high, bum 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 bum, all those calls, bop 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 bop, high G's. He would get the high solos. And the second trumpet got the medium solos. I got these really low solos. You would be amazed. And Goddardammerung especially, he wrote a slew of them. Also, Das Rheingold, there were a lot of them in the third trumpet. And just a different way of writing. But we used rotary valves for the first 6 rehearsals. And the conductor had problems with it. And it wasn't intonation. He wasn't used to the timbre. And we eventually went back to pistons, which was disappointing, but whatever. A lyric opera in Chicago also has a thing they're dealing with now too about the rotary valves, and they're now not allowed to use them because first of all they were supposed to be paid doubling, and so it led to a lot of stuff, and so. It's too bad, but most orchestras now. Chicago Symphony was the first one in the modern era, and it was Chigwitz and Herseth that wanted to try out the German rotary valve trumpets. And they each bought a Munke, M-umlaut-O-M-K-E. It's like monkey. Munke. How many say, you know the Boehm trumpet concerto? You shouldn't, there's no such thing. Burma trumpet concerto. You know the Saxa book? You say the E at the end in German. So Burma, and it's an umlaut. It's been anglicized by B-O-E, which we don't know how to pronounce it, but try to avoid saying BAME or BOEM or boom. It's a word we don't use. Just think E, Burma. Okay, so that's how you say that. I don't know why I got on that. Okay, so the rotary valve trumpet is a glorious sound, and a lot of orchestras are doing it. Chicago Symphony started doing it, so they don't get doubling in the Chicago Symphony. They don't get doubling. But all the other orchestras were being told by their conductors that they had to get rotary valves, so they put it in their contract that since they'd have to practice these instruments, they get doubling. What is doubling? Doubling is something in the contract where when you're playing an instrument that you weren't hired to play, like the trumpet. If you're asked to play the flugelhorn in most symphony orchestras, the piccolo trumpet, a cornet, a rotary valve trumpet, you get some extra amount on each performance, a percentage, or it's in your contract or something, but we have to play a lot of different instruments. If you were a flute player and they're going to do Stars and Stripes forever, the piccolo player won't get doubling, but the other 3, when they pick up their piccolos, get doubling. It's a scam. Okay, thanks for all these great questions. Anything else? Yes?
That chart that you're talking about with all the intonation for every note that you said you made.
Yeah, what I did was I did a class just like, I started doing it here, then I stopped. Obviously, if I go on from C, your low C, C sharp is sharp, D is sharp, E flat, perfect. E is sharp because it's 1 and 2, F's a little sharp, F sharp's right on, G's on, A flat's good, A horribly sharp. So I've done this in classes. I usually do it on the bulletin board. I had a doctoral student, Joe Lill, and Joe typed it up and made it look beautiful. And if anybody wants that, if somebody like Jason wants to send me an email, I can send a copy and he can run them off. And Joe Lill did it. And it's just the tendencies of a traditional piston valve, B flat or C trumpet, period. Not counting your inadequacies to play high and because you might go sharp just because you're pinching extra. That's one of the reasons we play sharp in the upper register, because when we were young, we had to really pinch like mad. And we're going to take that to the grave. We'll always pinch. Because that's the sound we've gotten used to. Not a pinchy sound, but a higher sound. The same with the lower register. We sort of push down, and that's why we play flat in the lower register too. Okay, did that answer that? Yeah.